Hi all you dude and dudettes. Welcome to all you hobby hunters and hello to my boredom busters. This is Brad Claybaugh's Boredom Busters and I am your host Brad Claybaugh. This is the channel that explores all sorts of arts and crafts. So if you're looking for something fun and new to do, then this is the channel for you. And today we are continuing our series of tie-dye, but today we're doing something a little different. We are going to do a tie-dye wall hanging. The pattern is going to be what's called a Ronstar, and it can be used as a wall hanging, but also it can also be used as a table runner or a table throw. All right, Buster, so before we get on with the video, let's tell the people what to do if they want to subscribe. All right, so today's project is going to be, as I said, a wall hanging or a table throw. And the pattern is going to be a Ronstar. So for this project, you're going to need white cotton muslin for the wall hanging in any size that you choose. The piece that I'm working with at this time is 36 by 36. But it will have to be hemmed before it gets washed to keep it from fraying. So after it's hemmed, we're looking at something that's closer to either 33 square or 34 square, which is a nice size hanging. But certainly you can get larger pieces of fabric and tie up this pattern in a larger format. Also with this project, I'm going to show you a little helpful hint on how to use some old dye that's been sitting around a while. It's still good to use, but it helps to kind of filter it out because sometimes pieces do solidify as it's been sitting around. And I'll show you that later. And I also plan on doing a video of other helpful hints and tricks in tie-dyeing. So look forward to that. Okay, so let's get over to the table and I'll show you how to do the hemming of the muslin. All right, Busters. So here we are over at my portable ironing board. So, as I said, you want cotton muslin, and there's lots of different grades of it. Look for a fairly heavy one. I usually put my hand under it, and as you're going through the fabric store, if you do that, you'll see some are more transparent than others, which means they have a looser weave. You want one that's got a fairly heavy weave. It's just a more stable fabric. And, as you use it as a wall hanging, it's going to hold its shape a little bit better. So I've always said before you do any tie-dye, you want to pre-wash your fabric. And you still want to do that with this. So before you pre-wash your muslin, it's best to hem it first. If you wash it in this state, the edges will fray and then you've got to clean that up. And then you will still have to hem it to have a nice tidy edge when you're finished with your project. So I like to hem it ahead of time. I used to try to use a rolled hem on this fabric. I never had much success with that. So the way I like to hem it is I do a double fold. And so I fold it over, iron it, go all the way around once, folding everything. Then do a second roll, iron that down, then take it to the sewing machine to stitch it. And I find I get a nice, tidy result that way. And so you might like to try to do that yourself. All right, so I'm just going to go ahead and iron on my hems, and then we'll take it over to the sewing machine. Oh, and when you roll, and before for your hems, roll it over about a ½ inch as you iron it. And I have steam on my set on my iron, so it helps set the fold So just keep going, just eyeballing about half an inch or so all the way around. All right, that's around once. Now we'll fold that over again. I was also thinking the other advantage of ironing this hem in now as opposed to after you wash it, if there's any sizing in the fabric, it gives it a little stiffness and body, so it makes it a little easier to manage as you're ironing. If you happen to have fabric in your stash that you're using that you've already washed ahead of time, you might want to take a little bit of spray starch and just lightly starch it, let that dry just to stiffen it up. It makes it just a little easier to manipulate the fabric. And then you can go ahead and wash it again to get that starching out. All right, so the second fold, we just keep it as tight as your first one. And go all the way around one more time. Okay, there we are. We're all ironed out. Now let's go over to the sewing machine and we'll stitch it up and then it'll be ready for its pre-wash. Okay, so now that you got your nice tidy hem ironed in place, now we want to just stitch it in place. Make sure you use white cotton thread. If you ever notice any of your tie-dye t-shirts that you've done, the manufacturer uses polyester thread. That's why the fabric is cotton, but when you're done dyeing it and washing it, the stitching on the shoulders and around the bottom hem still is white. That's because that's polyester thread and the dye does not take into the polyester. So we want to make sure we use cotton thread, so when we dye our tapestry, everything is the same color. We don't have any white thread around the border. So I have white cotton thread loaded in my sewing machine. So let's get this stitched out and then we can put it in the wash. All right, so that all the way around and back stitch at the finish to lock everything together. And so now we can take that out. Clean up our threads. And so now it's ready for the pre-wash. So the other benefit of using cotton thread on this, like I say, it will take the dye, is if your stitching isn't perfectly straight, this way it blends in with the dye, so you'll never see the stitching once you get finished with this project. All right, so I'm going to put this in the pre-wash, and then I'll soak it for 20 minutes in soda ash, and then we'll show you how to fold up the Ronstar. It's a really fun and simple pattern, but as easy as it is, it gives you great results. And so I think in blues, greens, and purples this time. And so anyway, I'll see you after everything is prepped, and we'll come back to the table here and I'll show you how to fold it up. All right, see you later. All right, friends, we're here back at the table ready to fold up our tapestry. So let's recap. We have hemmed the muslin, and if you're interested in making a larger wall hanging, I've heard of people actually buying twin sheets that are 100% cotton and white, and then cutting it square and hemming just one edge. That way you can make a very large hanging out of a good fabric, and it's maybe less expensive than actually buying the yardage and doing all the hemming yourself. So just a little hint there. You might look for something, if you want something larger, try doing it out of a white cotton bed sheet. Anyway, so we hemmed our muslin. I started with a 36 by 36, and I was right after we hemmed it. It's approximately 33 by 33. So then I pre-washed it and then soaked it in soda ash for 20 minutes and then spun it so it's just slightly damp. And so now we're ready to fold up our starflower tapestry. All right, so the first two steps is basically you fold it into quarters. So we'll half it. And then half again, so you have a smaller square. And then straighten that out. Okay. Try and flatten it out as best you can to get the wrinkles out. Then we start the airplane folds. So you'll take your hem where it comes together and fold that back over from the center up to the crease. Then we take that and flip that over. That'll be your second fold, is on the opposite side. Okay. Then we take that fold and fold it over to the center again. And then flip it over one more time. And then bring that into the center. So you want your tapestry to look like this when you're finished. It'll have 2 folds on one side and you'll have 5 folds on the other side. And then we can flip that over, going that way. Okay, so now you want to pay attention to where the edges of your tapestry are, because when we roll, it's basically a roll. You're spiraling this point up to toward the outside. So this is the middle, and this would be the outside. So you want to see where your tapestry ends, and you could roll it all the way out, but to have the star flower kind of have some definition, I like to stop it short of the edge so there is a border around it. So a couple fingers down, say you'll be into this region about when we're finished. All right, so with this facing you, you will roll toward this pointed, the long point. And you have to really hold on to this because it always wants to unroll itself. So you grab the point. You can see that, yeah. And just start spiraling that up. And then that will make creases. It helps to kind of push it down flat to your table. And then just keep spinning that up. And let's say the biggest challenge is keeping that point stable in the center. I'm up to my line, so that's where we want to stop. Now with your kite string, we'll tie that up to help stabilize it. You could use rubber bands on this part also, especially on this tapestry that isn't very large. The rubber bands would be adequate to hold it together. The one thing you want to do is this part here where you made your initial mark, you want to pull that in because you do want to trap that under your kite string. And you'll see why here in a little bit. There we are. Let's one more time. Okay, good. All right, trim that. Tie that off. All right, and this happens on this pattern quite a bit. I lost the connection to this part right here, so just loosen this up and go back, trap it again. Try and grab a little bit more fabric this time around. Okay, so now that's tied off. Now, what you want to do is kind of like your normal spiral on a t-shirt. You want to create a circle here. So from this point, you'll come around like that, just to kind of create the continuous circle there. So what you'll do then is divide this into your pie shapes. Now I am going to be dyeing 2 different colors, so you'll make 4 equal parts, so you can literally just divide it like that. And so you'll only dye up to this line with one color here, up to this line with another color there. This space and this space will be the same color, that space and that space will be the same color. Then this out here can be a different color. I'll actually do a scrunch on this, and then I'll band that with rubber bands, and we'll do a 2-tone on this area. These will be solid colors each. Okay, so that's our Starflower tapestry. So now let's go out in the garage and we'll get that all dyed and get it in the tub to cure for 24 hours. Okay, Busters, we're out here at the laundry sink getting ready to dye our Starflower. Just want to clue you in on one thing. When we folded it, I marked it off and I said I was going to do the flower portion with 2 colors, so I made 4 equal spaces. I decided to actually dye the flower portion of the tapestry with 3 colors, so you just want to divide that up into 6 equal pie shapes, to dye. And the other thing I want to tell you about, I made a new video on tie-dyeing basics, and it's mostly about materials, things you need, and how to mix your soda ash and a few things like that. But toward the end of the video, I talk about how to stretch the life of your dye if you've done a project and you still have quite a bit of dye left over, but it sits around for a while, how to filter it out with coffee filters to get out any solidified sediments that accumulate just from sitting around. And so I did that with all these. I had them from previous projects. And so they've all been filtered out. And so some of them are actually combinations of colors. So basically, it's a yellow and a green and a blue that I'm going to dye the star flower with. And then the scrunched portion will be another kind of blue and a purple over the top of that. So let's go ahead and dye this up. We'll start with the yellow. And this pattern, it gets quite thick from rolling it all up. So you have to make sure you get enough dye on, and you'll have to probably do it in, stages. So you'll put it down, the color, and then come back and, see how much penetration you had and add more if you need to. So it looks like the dye penetrated pretty well in the star flower spiral, so we can turn it over and dye the other side. And you'll put the same colors in the same spots that you did on the previous side. Okay, that's both sides dyed. So now that'll go in the tub with the metal rack to cure for 24 hours. And then I will rinse that out, wash it, and then I'll give you the reveal afterward. All right. Thanks for watching. I'll see you tomorrow. All right, gang. Before I do the reveal of our Starflower tapestry, I wanted to have a little one-on-one time here real quick. I like doing these videos for you. That way I can impart my knowledge to the YouTube audience, and that way hopefully you will learn something and try something new. Well, also the thing about arts and crafts is if I'm making something specifically to sell, I do specific methods, do make it very tried and true. That way I can rely on the results. But what's nice about these videos is it gives me the opportunity sometimes to experiment and try something a little different and maybe pass that knowledge on to you. If it works, great. And if it doesn't, that's great also, because then I can teach that to you, and that way you know what to avoid. And so earlier in this video, I showed how to filter out dye that's been sitting around a while in case there's some particles that have solidified in it. And that really works. But also the dye that I used for the tapestry that I had tied up initially was maybe 4 or 5 weeks old. And that's a little too old. The older the dye gets, the weaker and not as vibrant the results are. And so it's still a good idea. You can do it if you've done a project and you still have quite a bit of dye left over and you want to use it. And say if it's a week, 2 weeks old at the most, then, that will work fine. But I let mine go too long, and, I knew After a certain period of time, it lost its vibrancy, but I didn't know kind of where that borderline is. But now I can see with the results that I got. So I actually made a new tapestry and re-dyed it with fresh dye, so you can see the way that the tapestry should look. And then I'll also show you the one with the older dye, so you can kind of see what happens in the process if you're using dye that's past its shelf life, let's say. All right, so let's go to the table and let's take a look at the results. All right, Busters. So here is our star flower tapestry. This is my redo. I decided to make a larger tapestry than the initial one that you see in the beginning of the video, because this one I will probably sell at a holiday bazaar this winter. And so this one is about 42 by 42. And it did use a lot of the same colors though. And so when I show you the first tapestry with the older dye, you'll see the great difference in how the colors just look a lot more washed out and faded. We ended up using, though, the yellows are actually a combination of bright yellow and deep yellow. It's about 3/4 of the bright yellow and 1/4 of the deep yellow. And then used bright green, azure blue, and then I did do different colors on the outside of this tapestry as opposed to the first one. I used dragon fruit and blue violet, and so that is the colors on this one. It came out really nice, and like I say, if you fold it the way I showed you and obviously use fresh dye, this is the kind of result that you'll get. Let me go grab the first one with the older dye, and you can see the difference, because the star flower in the center, I use the exact same colors on the first one, and you'll be able to compare how they look so different. Okay, so this is the original, but with the old dye and you can see how it turns very washed out looking. It almost looks like old washed denim. But like I said, the colors on the inside were the same colors as the larger one. The outside, I had used a blue and a purple. And those, because of the fading, they don't even really show up. You can't barely see it. I can see slight variation here, but on the video, I'm sure you probably can't. But you can see the just a drastic difference in the color and the vibrancy. Anyway, all right, let's go back to the table and I'll do sign off and we'll talk about our next project. All right, Busters, so I hope you enjoyed that project. Hope you learned something new. I know I did. Hey, if you like it, give me a thumbs up and tell your friends. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please do. I've got a lot more projects planned for the future, and I'd hate to have you miss any of them. So if you subscribe, also hit that notification bell. So our next project is going to be a pattern called Wigwag. And so make sure you come back and check it out. Make sure you have a really good day. Peace out. And don't forget to bust out some art. Hey, Squirt, thanks for keeping me company.